Well, if you listen to the readings, you should already have an idea on what the message of the scriptures is for us today. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity, empty, meaningless. All those years you put in at a job, right? Working all those hours. And at the end, what do you get? A gold watch, a monogrammed pen, cake and some drinks in the break room, and then you're done. We spend all of our time in this idea that the work that we do gives meaning or value to your life. It does not. The accumulation of wealth, the living of a comfortable life, will never satisfy the human heart. Right? There's plenty of people who have the fancy cars and the yacht and the private jets who are miserable and feel empty. Now, they're comfortable while they feel miserable, right? And so the scriptures are pointing out the human person is not made for things. That's what Jesus says. Take care to guard against all greed. For though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions. And this has become problematic for our society, right? Because it's not just the rich that want to live like the rich. When I was young, they still showed lifestyles of the rich and famous. Everyone wants to live the lifestyle of the rich and famous. So how do we go about it? Well, we live up to our necks in credit card debt, mortgages. We take most of our income and we pay it to interest. We're paying the banks for all that anxiety and worry of stuff that will become useless junk. Why do we do it? It's a materialist thing. We've been told we have to have the nicest clothes, the nicest car. These are signs of having been successful. As a seminarian, I knew I was going to have to live a simple life as a priest, right? I do not belong to religious order, and so I did not make a vow of poverty. Nevertheless, canon law requires that priests live simply, right? Now, what I discovered is as you get rid of those things that you're paying interest on, when you stop spending money that you don't have on things that you don't need, a lot of the stress and anxiety goes away. The simpler you make your life, the more freedom you discover. Right? A lot of times we end up working to pay the bills. We go to work because we have the bills. It's a vicious cycle of accumulation of unnecessary things that won't fulfill our hearts. That simplicity of life, if it's lived well, usually what you find out is not only do you not need certain things that the world tells you you need, right? You don't need the latest and greatest best car. You really don't. And you certainly do not need the latest iPhone. If they get any bigger, we'll be wearing backpacks for batteries. Right? They won't make you happy. You'll enjoy them for a week or two. But a new car in 6 months becomes an old car that has a new car payment. That's what it is, right? You find out the simpler your life is, that you actually do, on most occasions, have what is necessary. And in fact, you might find yourself with a little bit of abundance. Right? God gives to us abundance, not so that we can have fancy vacations, yachts, the mansion, right? But so that we might take care of those who do not have. Now, we don't like to hear that as Americans, because I worked real hard, right? And so I made my money. I deserve to enjoy my money. Well, the Christian answer to that is God gives you everything that you have. If you have intelligence, you got it from God. It's good if we have used the gifts that God has given us, but God, we owe to God everything. My whole self, mind, heart, soul, and all of my possessions belongs to Him. I am purchased by the blood of the Lamb. Here's the second thing that happens to us in a society where everything is about the stuff that we have. It's never enough, and we spend so much time and worry trying to get it and keep it and update it that we leave ourselves very little time for the things that are full and meaningful, the persons in our lives. The human heart was not made for things. It was made for persons. First and above all, God, the three persons of the most holy Trinity. And then flowing out of that, family and friends, and the whole world, our brothers and sisters. That's the purpose of our lives. That's where you will find meaning. Not that those relationships won't from time to time disappoint you, but those are the things that will give meaning to your life. If you spend your life collecting things and ignoring persons, you will not be happy at the end. The bumper sticker, "He who dies with the most toys wins," is a lie. It's not true. Right? It's okay to be wealthy. That's not a bad thing. It's not immoral to be wealthy, although in many cases, wealth does give way to immorality, and in some cases, one finds that they have to compromise their own conscience in order to become wealthy. And in those cases, it's immoral. Money here is not the problem. It's love of money. Where the heart is, there also is your treasure. St. Paul says it to the Colossians. He says, "Put to death then the parts of you that are earthly: immorality, fornication, impurity, passion, disordered passions, evil desire, and the greed that is idolatry." We very often don't think of greed in that way. Right? We know I'm not allowed to commit adultery, I'm not allowed to murder, right? Greed, the love of things, not being disattached from your money or your job or the stuff that you have. Not holding those things as the most important. That is greed. And you will always, when you're in the grip of greed, want more. And it is a form of idolatry. Right? We think in our heads, the Israelites at the foot of Mount Sinai worshiping the golden calf. How could they be so stupid? God had just saved them from slavery in Egypt. They'd seen all the wonderful works, and Moses is gone for 40 days and 40 nights, and you're going to make a golden calf and worship it? Yet look around at our society. We've replaced character and virtue and goodness and kindness with stuff. Just stuff. None of which will remain. And most of which, if you've been really successful and you've collected a ton of money, you're not going to get to spend it. That's what the first reading said, right? Those who didn't work for it are going to spend it. And so just on a real practical level, freedom of heart leaves you free to love more fully, and it gets you away from the things. Now, Jesus, he isn't just criticizing those who have stored up earthly treasures, but those who have stored up earthly treasures and are not rich in what matters to God. We need that part too. What are the things that matter to God? Well, our virtue, our honesty, our character, that we spend each day as a life of love and sacrifice for others, that we proclaim the good news of our salvation in Jesus Christ. We who are believers, I'm not rich if I have nice things. If I'm a believer, I'm rich because I belong to Christ, who emptied himself and took the form of a slave so that we might become rich in grace. That's true rich. And that doesn't perish. Grace lasts for all eternity. So the final thing then is, when we are not disattached from earthly things, we leave an emptiness in our lives that's crying out to be filled. And it's a lot of time those attachment to the things, to our work, to success, to fame, that lead us to embrace some of the more awful things in our life. Because when you get disappointed by what you thought life was about, you start trying to put in that place all sorts of other things. But if you disattach yourself from those things, if you live for Christ in the midst of the world, you discover a peace, so that not only will you have some good things, but even if you don't have them, you have the one thing that matters. The abundance that we have if we live a responsible fiscal life means that abundance is not meant for our own comfort. It's meant to take care of those who do not have. Now, this part we Americans especially don't like, right? But it is the Christian answer. Canon law requires that every Catholic provide for the poor out of their own resources. What does that mean? It means you can't just write a check to the church and call it good and let the deacon take care of the poor. You can't just vote for the government to take away everyone else's money and call it good. It means in your own life, in your encounters with those who need your help, you must provide for them out of the abundance of your own life. And this is the most detrimental thing that's happened because of the way we as society lives in constant crushing debt. We don't have abundance to give to anyone. And so, because we are living with an attachment to earthly things that are unnecessary, not only do we run the risk of falling into the greed that is idolatry and therefore displeasing God, but we're also not fulfilling our obligation of charity to the poor. And so it hits us twice. So I would say to you, my brothers and sisters, look carefully at your lives. Where is it that you have collected and stored up things that are unnecessary? Do your best to get out of debt and simplify your lives as much as possible. You will receive freedom from it. And make sure that what abundance you have, I'm not saying you can't have nice things or a nice house or even go on a nice vacation, But make sure that when you're looking at the abundance that you have, that out of that abundance, you have personal charities. You do take steps to take care of others in need with the abundance that God gives you. If we do this really well, not only do we experience freedom, but we actually bring freedom to others by the example of the way we live our lives.